Browns training camp is underway. The team's at the Greenbrier. There's some news coming out of that and the next phase of our Browns 2024 opponents. We are back in division. Last week it was the Bengals. Now it's the Baltimore Ravens. We'll dive into Baltimore. Can they repeat what they did last year? What about that lack of playoff success overall from the expectations? What does it mean when they face the Browns twice this year? We'll get into all that on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Shabba-lubba hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hello, everybody. Yes, it is training camp time with the Browns, and we have some injury news, some updates. Amari Cooper's back, so that's cool. Feeling good there, right? We'll talk about the Baltimore Ravens in just a moment. One thing that jumped out to me, though, Browns fans, is anybody else getting a little nervous about Jerry Jeudy and his lack of availability? I know I am. Make sure you click and subscribe, click like, notifications on, comment. We love that, too. Get us on Twitter, on X, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel and the show. Always like that. Jerry Jeudy. So we got this from our friend of show, Tony Grossi, ESPN Cleveland. A notable, the Browns were off today, on Wednesday for practice, internal stuff, classroom stuff. But on Tuesday, and Stefanski, to his credit, has been working the team pretty hard. They have 90-minute drills. It's been hot. They're sweating and all that. But notable DNPs did not participate. This from Grossi. Among players not on injury list were defensive end Myles Garrett, safety Rodney McLeod, and receiver Jerry Jeudy. Once again, Jeudy jumped in for a couple reps in an offensive period on air without helmets. So a slow ramp up to Jerry Jeudy. And I don't know. This guy, the way Andrew Berry has been stalking him, wanting him, trying to trade for him, wanting to have drafted him, finally got him and extended him. This guy should have the expectations to eventually be the Browns' number one, if not a 1A or super high end too. Maybe not this year with Amari Cooper, but with Amari Cooper on his last year of his deal, restructured, organized, fully guaranteed, you really need Jerry Jeudy to step up. Because after that, you have Cedric Tillman, who I love. I think big things for Cedric Tillman. But Cedric Tillman's a sophomore. Elijah Moore, last year of his deal as well, slot guy. Can he take a step forward? We hope. But we thought that was going to be last year as well. It didn't happen. Jamari Thrash, 5th-round pick, probably going to be a little bit more of a special teamer, not much of a contributor. And then you have just a bunch of guys. David Njoku, by the way, reports out he always looks fantastic, looks extra fantastic in drills. Deshaun Watson, you probably saw the video on social, last pass of the day he bounced off the turf. Okay, whatever. He's been thrown really well. He's been on not just through air, but with defenses, right? With the defense hovering around. He's connecting with Njoku. He's connecting with Cooper. He was 5 for 5 after almost getting intercepted in a slow start. That's fine. This is a better camp for Deshaun Watson at this point than it was last year. I don't know if you guys remember, but remember Deshaun Watson we saw, and hopefully this doesn't go to the first week of the season, but he was throwing the ball down. It was really low all the time. The trajectory just looked off. All accounts from what we've seen from some video outside of the odd blip, it's training camp, whatever, and just accounts on physically, they're putting his shoulder to the test. That right shoulder, that glenoid bone, that surgically repaired shoulder to the test, and it is holding up well, and he's looking good. So overall, good news. The tackle situation as well for Cleveland. You got Jack Conklin, who knows when he's going to be back. DeJuan Jones and Jedrick Wills slow ramp up. Right now, the expectation is they start the season, so that's good. But other than that, we're clipping along in the preseason, hoping nobody else gets hurt, and watching Mike Vrabel do wind sprints with Jameis Winston and practicing the new kickoff rule. So some good news there, some little Browns notes. But let me know what you think about the Jerry Jeudy situation, his lack of availability and the up and down career, mainly down in Denver. Lots of potential. Are you nervous? What are your expectations for Jerry Jeudy? Hit us up in the comments. Get us on social, on Twitter, X, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. Okay, week 8. Browns 2024 opponent preview. Last week we had the Bengals. This week it's the Baltimore Ravens. And we bring in Melissa Kim, who just got off the field from Ravens practice. Melissa, before we went on, you said you're in your car. It says it's 100 degrees in there. You're boiling.
Yeah, it's pretty steamy out here in Baltimore, not going to lie. We kind of expect that a little bit. This week in particular has been a little bit warmer. Like humidity has been a little bit warmer than we expect. But Coach Harbaugh is old school. He's upset that we're not doing this twice a day, you know? So definitely getting the guys geared up for sure around here.
Well, I'm sure the players aren't upset about that. Remember those? Didn't seem like that long ago, was it, Melissa? Where you had these guys in the footage and just dripping with sweat, and just miserable. And now the union has helped them out with that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you hear kind of like the old school guys. We have former players that come in and out too, which I'm sure you guys do as well. They're like, oh, this is nothing. Like, you know, and like the old school fans, like, oh, remember when we used to do this twice a day or 3 times a day sometimes? So apparently we are more concerned about people's health and well-being in this day and age,
which is good. I think it's good. You know, you got helmets now, not the leather one, and you're not having people keel over from 100+ degree heat. So that's a positive. So Melissa, I want to have you on to really go over what this Baltimore Ravens team is going into the season, what it means when they face the Browns, and really this AFC North, which I'm sure you'd agree is the toughest in the entire league, top to bottom. It is absolutely incredible how much talent and how tight this division is. So when we look at this Ravens offseason, what's your vibe overall? Good offseason, good addition, good draft, bad in the middle? How do you feel?
Yeah, Andy, I definitely don't disagree with you there. You look at how the trajectory of this division in the last couple of years, especially last year, you know, I mean, everybody finished pretty strongly. I think that they're only up and up so much so that, you know, Hard Knocks wants to do something on the entire division, not just one team. So I think that says a lot about where this division is. And in terms of the Ravens offseason, obviously the big key addition would be Derrick Henry, who Ravens fans have been dying to see in real life. He's someone I actually covered in college as well when I was covering the SEC. And he is just as big as he was back then. He played alongside a guy on that running back room to give you an idea of what those SEC guys are like. If you remember running back by the name of Bo Scarborough, who was also a gigantic human being as well. He was kind of the guy that we were all looking at back then, covering Alabama. But Derrick Henry obviously right up there with him. He's only gotten bigger since college. I mean, obviously. But it's so funny because I heard a fan say today that when Derrick Henry was coming out, like, oh my God, there's Derrick Henry. And like some kid was like, yeah, he could stiff arm you with his finger, you know? So,
he's not wrong.
Obviously a lot of excitement surrounding the signing of Derrick Henry, just given what Lamar can already do in the backfield, what Derrick Henry would do to that addition. They did lose a significant number of guys, though. Obviously a lot of them going to the Chargers, which now people are out here calling like the Ravens West Coast edition with Coach Harbaugh. Coach Jim Harbaugh, I should say, out there, and George Tease now as general manager, and you know J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Tony Jefferson, I mean Bradley Bozeman, Hayden Hurst. The list goes on and on and on for the guys that are now out there. But yeah, I think that was obviously an area. Though a lot of those key positions are a place that the Ravens wanted to not replace per se, but they knew that they needed a little bit of in that off season. So you know, we've had various positions where they've picked up guys again. Chris Ford, one of them as well, who I talked to one-on-one today. And, you know, I think that especially in that running back room, it's definitely some new faces. So I think that for overall, I think that the Ravens feel pretty good about what they did in the offseason.
Let's talk about that running back situation for Baltimore, because one of the missing pieces, and Lamar's made up for it mostly himself because he's so fast and can get around. But really the turnover injuries, just the plague of injuries to that backfield in Baltimore. You mentioned J.K. Dobbins. We love him coming out of Ohio State. My goodness, the poor guy, right? Can't catch a break. But you go through that loop. Derrick Henry, I thought it was a very interesting addition because first thought is, 30-year-old running back. But then you think of it this way, well, he's probably not going to have that 280, 300 carry load he had in Tennessee. And maybe it keeps him a little fresher. Do you think is that part of the strategy, like use him, really try to maximize what's left in him and not have him as that quote bell cow?
I absolutely think so. You know, they've had a couple more options as well. You know, you look at Justice Hill, who's probably the veteran of that running back room right now, given that he's had the most years here. A couple guys that are second-year guys. Owen Wright has been getting some looks as well. Keaton Mitchell, he had some flashes of brilliance last year. Yeah. I don't think we'll see him until probably about the second half of the season, though. He's kind of coming back from injury from last year, too. But he's been around. I've seen him on the sidelines and chatted with him a little bit, too. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think one thing that is an interesting aspect to look at, too, is this is their second year under offensive coordinator Todd Monken. And so he's obviously a little bit more comfortable this year as well. He kind of told me that. I asked him yesterday or earlier this week, what are we going to see more from you? Are you a little bit more comfortable now that in your second year? The wide receiver core, the main three guys have been together now for a year or two. And he's like, he used this analogy. He's like, we've moved into the house and now we're kind of getting acquainted with, we're decorating the rooms now. We're getting a little bit more comfortable making the rooms our own. So I think that, yes, obviously having Derrick Henry as a weapon will be huge, but I don't think that you should look away, too, from Lamar being able to throw the ball. That's something that Lamar's talked about pretty much in every single preseason since I've been here, since 2021, how if he had a preference to run the ball or throw the ball, he would throw the ball because at the end of the day, too, he's been notorious for what he can do with his legs, but I think he's out to prove still a little bit that he can be a true dual threat quarterback, and this is probably one of the better group of wide receivers since I've been here, at least, with Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers. Obviously, OBJ was a big part of that last year, no longer here in Miami, now in Miami. But I think that the core of what the lessons that OBJ left, the wisdom that he left, I think is still with those three guys here.
In conversation with Melissa Kim, covers the Baltimore Ravens. Melissa, you mentioned Keaton Mitchell. I was like, that name rings a bell. And I was like, oh, yes, November 12th. Versus the Browns when he had that 39-yard run for a touchdown. I was like, that's where that name comes in. Yeah. And then he got it. And then, he got injured a few weeks later. So he's coming back. Yeah, the depth is there. And it's a case now where, unlike I feel, and we'll see, maybe the Buffalo Bills they did make a switch post Ken Dorsey to try to run the ball more. But before it was kind of like, okay, it's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and it's kind of like they have to do almost everything, sort of. They have to run, you got to be hero ball. And I feel with how the Ravens have built it out, they don't necessarily have to do that. But Lamar still can go hero and run, but they don't necessarily need to. When you couple that with how that offensive line is built, is there confidence that this offense can take that next step forward?
I think so, for sure. Offensive line is actually the one position group that I've been studying pretty hard since the beginning of camp because they did lose 3 of their 5 starters.
Yeah.
Kevin Zeitler went to the Lions, and Morgan Moses and John Simpson went to the Jets. So that is definitely, obviously, the core of any offense, right? The offensive line, can you protect your quarterback? So I think that is certainly going to be the biggest question for the Ravens going into the season. But then also a group that we haven't mentioned on the offense, too, are the tight ends, right? And Pat Ricard himself, the lone fullback on the team. Those guys, too, are responsible for a lot of what happens on this offense, especially in terms of blocking. We know that Mark Andrews is Lamar Jackson's favorite target on the team. Isaiah Likely is out to prove a little bit of that as well. He's had a great camp, honestly, Isaiah Likely, third year out of Coastal Carolina now. And he has really built that chemistry with Lamar. We've seen a lot of it in this camp. And he had a lot of that last season as well when he got that experience when Mark Andrews was out with the foot injury. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, what they'll do creatively, I think, with this offense, especially utilizing those tight ends, too, because we've talked to both Mark and Isaiah and the tight ends coach about this, like how fun it could be. If you ask Mark Andrews about, 2 tight end sets and what this offense is capable of between him and Isaiah Likely, he like starts smiling, because he's just so excited about what they could possibly be. And they've got Charlie Kohler, another gigantic human being. He came in with Isaiah Likely as well. So I think that the tight end group is certainly one to watch too.
Isaiah Likely really popped last year when given that opportunity. And really for these young guys, that's what you need, right? When you get the chance to you make people's heads turn. I think Likely did that. So that offensive line is really the spot where we have to see how that gels for Baltimore. The defense, I'm sure you're the same way. Boy, I love Patrick Queen. Oh, I hate it when we play, but as a player, God, that's a damn good linebacker. And now he goes to the Steelers, who we both hate. And now you kind of do that. But that Ravens defense, to me, from the outside, still looks pretty strong. With losing Queen, how you feel about linebacker?
Yeah, Queen and Geno Stone. I think those are two guys on the defense that will sorely be missed. Stone also, by the way, he's on the Bengals, so a guy that both these teams face as well. So it's funny how they both went to like opposing teams in the division. But no, I was a huge fan of Patrick Queen. I was such a fan of what he did and how he developed as a player in this league. He literally had the upward trajectory, and obviously playing next to a guy like Roquan Smith, I think helps out a lot. Now, the guy coming after Queen is this guy named Trenton Simpson, who's out of Clemson. He was a rookie last year, so he had his rookie tutelage year behind Patrick Queen and alongside Roquan Smith, which, I mean, what better deal could you get, you know? Yeah. And so we actually talked to Trent today. He's a guy that last year in talking to him, he was always so polite and so nice, like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. He's from the South. And then when you see him on the field, literally does not smile at all. And he said today, he's like, I wanted people to know that, like, I mean business, like when I'm on the field. And so Roquan obviously has taken him under his wing. They went on vacation together this past summer, obviously got a lot of time together, talked a lot of football. And Trent says, every time that I get the chance to talk football with Roquan, I do, because what better guy is there to learn from? So I do feel pretty good about the linebacker core. Aside from that, they have generally a lot of the guys, same guys returning, at least on the inside. On the outside as well, too. Kyle Van Noy is back for another year. And then we have these guys who I'm really hoping to see emerge a lot. Odafe Owe has battled some injury in the last couple of years on the edge. I hope to see a lot more from him. He's someone that I've talked to extensively in the last year as well. About what he knows that he can do. He said a lot of this game obviously is physical, going on doing these reps, training camp, all that, but a lot of his mental and emotional too, So I think that that's something that he struggled with a little bit, but he's overcome that. David Ojabo as well, someone stud at Michigan, but we have not gotten to see either because of injuries. 2 seasons in a row of injuries. He's someone that has looked pretty good this camp as well. So, honestly, I don't really see this defense lagging a lot. I see them picking up a little bit from where they left off last season. A lot of those same guys are here still, and a lot of them are coming back from injury and out to prove that they can be a part of this too. I think about guys like Arthur Millette on this team, who was on the Steelers previously. He had his first year in Baltimore last year. He was just given a contract this past offseason in March, and he's always like, I want to let people know that their investment in me was worth it. So he's had a great camp so far. And then, I think the rest of the defense, we talk about the secondary too, looks pretty good.
Yeah, the Kyle Hamiltons, the Marlon Humphreys, that's stalwarts on that defense. And the Ravens, if nothing else, they know how to build linebackers. So that Trent Simpson, Browns fans, is somebody to watch for. Trenton Simpson, I should say, someone to watch for, because like you said, the casual fan not going to know, well, who's this guy? Patrick Queen's gone, but it sounds like he could kind of jump right in there and be a surprise.
Yeah, and especially because that's all he's been hearing. That's all he's been hearing for the last year or so, or the whole offseason. Can he be Patrick Queen? Oh, big shoes to fill. That's literally all he's been hearing about. So I'm sure that the mental part of that is a part of his daily routine too, in terms of, can he live up to what Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith did last year?
Well, let's look at this schedule for Browns Ravens and the AFC North overall, on top of being super competitive and being on Hard Knocks. Well, on paper anyway, they have the toughest schedules, it seems like. I think Pittsburgh technically has the toughest, but whatever. We have both Browns, Ravens are dealing with it. We face off first in week 8. For the Browns, they played the Bengals the week before. For the Ravens, you're in Tampa Bay, then travel to Cleveland on October 27th to face old nemesis Baker Mayfield, who had a bit of success against the Ravens when he was in orange and brown. Where do you see in week 8? Way too early predictions on that, but where this team is, you guys have the Bengals in Cincy, home to Washington, at Tampa, travel to Cleveland. What do you think's happening in this game, week 8?
I mean, that's definitely a tough stretch, plain and simple. I know that it's kind of like this is like a renewed rivalry. I think the Ravens and the Browns, right? Because usually week 18 the Ravens play the Steelers, and this year it's the Browns. They've definitely kept on. But the initial meeting, I know that there are some feelings for sure after the Ravens lost to the Browns last year. So some strong feelings. So I know that they're definitely, whether they say it or not, it's human nature for us to think about that, right?
Sure.
So I mean, I think it's going to be a tough one for the Ravens by any stretch of the imagination. A, because it's a divisional opponent. B, they've seen now what Deshaun Watson is capable of. And C, it's at the end of a tough stretch for them where they've had some road games, and playing in Cincinnati is never a treat either. So I think that it's going to be a very, very competitive situation at that point.
Well, it's a good point you bring up, because last year, the first game they played Deshaun Watson, remember, it was like an hour before the game. It's like, I can't go. It's like, oh, hey, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, how about you go get killed? And it was a disaster. But then the second time Deshaun was back, bad first half, then went 11 for 11, looked his best. We're thinking we're off. And then the word glenoid bone that I'd never heard of before in my life is now firmly implanted in my brain. Glenoid bone surgery, and that was it. But you're right. That was an interesting last meeting because of that second half.
Yeah, I remember thinking with a bunch of people that I was watching the game with, like my colleagues I was watching the game with, we're like, what just happened right now? And then afterwards, we're like, oh, Deshaun basically played like not healthy at all. And, you know, they had figured something out. You know, I mean, there are a couple of teams that did that last year that were able to figure out the Ravens defense given their success, but they were still able to figure out some pieces here and there as to how to be successful against them. And I think the Browns proved that. And I think that is something that the coaching staff and the team, the players are absolutely looking at. You know, that is, I remember talking to the guys after that game, and that was one that was pretty devastating to them. So for the guys that were here last year, I am positive that will be a talking point entering that game.
They'll be remembering it. And we know these division games are more important than ever because of the tough schedule overall and just how talented this division is. So, you know, you win the most division games, you could very well win the division. Melissa, thank you so much. Tell people where they can find you on X, on social, where you're working, all that good stuff.
Sure. I'm Melissa Y. Kim on both X. Sorry, I'm still not used to X.
I know, me too. Twitter, X, whatever.
Instagram, all the socials. Yeah, definitely looking forward to a lot of things to talk about ahead of week 8 for sure.
Going to be a lot of fun. Melissa, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. Try to stay cool.
Yes, thank you so much. You guys too.
See you later. There she is. Melissa Kim does a great job covering the Ravens. As we get set, that week 8 matchup, folks, boy, that's going to be interesting. Then, like she said, you finish off the season in Baltimore. And if things go the way us Browns fans hope, that could very well be for the division. That could be for the division title against Baltimore. How about that? A lot of the time, recent years, it's been versus Pittsburgh, you know, and opposite wise as well. When it hasn't been Pittsburgh, Baltimore's faced them. So very interesting matchup there. With the Ravens, with all the losses that they've had throughout the year, the defense, I don't think you're going to have any issue there, like Melissa pointed out. That Trenton Simpson, though, I don't like that. I don't like that with just another guy that they can slide in. They're so good at linebackers. It kills me to say, but they're phenomenal with linebackers, right? But that offensive line, that could be that weak point that we're looking at here for the Browns, right? And especially the importance of that defensive line being healthy and effective, especially at the interior. With the Quentin Jefferson you had, can Michael Hall by week 8 out of Ohio State, their second round pick, first pick of the draft, has he been able to get into the rotation, make an impact? What's the health of Dalvin Tomlinson, who had that scope? Should be okay for week 1, but we'll see. And are you able to get that internal pressure with, then, of course, Myles Garrett, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, around the edge, Zadarius Smith. You got Obo. Is Greg Newsome? What is that hamstring surgery? I'll buy someone a pizza if Greg Newsome is week 1 playing for the Browns. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope I have to. But you have hamstring surgery, he's not going to be ready. So how does that defense look? And if that offensive line for the Ravens isn't up to snuff where it needs to be, how effective is Derrick Henry? We know he can be a bulldozer on his own, but he's 30 years old. Still averaging over 4 yards a carry, though. He had 4.2 last year, I think 4.4 the year before, still over 1,100 yards. So people saying, oh, he's lost a step. Well, Derrick Henry losing a step is still going for over 1,100 yards. Right? So, okay. And what does that mean for Lamar and protecting him? So that, to me, the takeaway is, how does the Ravens offensive line gel and perform, not just to start the year, but when the Browns face them in week 8? Very, very interesting. What a division. What a division. It's just going to be an absolute dogfight. We're getting ever closer. Next week, it'll be a week 9 opponent against the Chargers. And like Melissa said, there's a lot of ex-Ravens who jumped on over to play with Jim Harbaugh. So how is that team looking in week 9? We'll talk about that next week. But very big thank you to Melissa Kim for jumping on right out of practice. She's 100-degree heat. She came on, does a great job. And to all of you, of course, leave the comments, subscribe. Let me know on that Jerry Jeudy thing too. I want to know. You nervous? I'm nervous. I'm nervous about Jerry Jeudy being effective. You paid him a whole bunch of money, contract extension, didn't practice, jumping in and out, injury, and with Amari Cooper on the last year of his deal, and Elijah Moore. I'm getting nervous. Are you nervous? Hit me up in the comments on Twitter, X, @SickPodBrowns, @AndyMC81, Instagram and TikTok, @AndyMCSports. Thanks to producer Jimmy and all of you. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara. And as always, go Browns!
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.